I have a home daycare. I like to think I'm pretty lenient, but I do have one big rule: don't make me the bad guy. I understand we might have different rules, but don't make your child resent me by not backing me up. Anyway, another rule is I don't allow outside toys or electronics. Kids can bring the stuffed animals for nap if they're sleeping on rest mats, but I don't want to be responsible if something gets broken. Years ago, I used to let kids bring whatever. Then a cheap McDonald's toy broke by accident, kid was upset and mom got mad at me. So now it's a hard rule. Most are okay with it. But I have a new kid, whose mom wanted him to bring his tablet because he needs it. I said sorry, but no. I'm not going to be responsible for it. We went back and forth, but finally she just says fine. But every morning, he's crying because she took his tablet from him in the car. She always gives me this look and says, "Miss Lucy says no tablet." I always try to say we have plenty of toys, but the kid spends the whole morning sulking. I've talked to mom, asked her to leave it at home and not even put it in the car, but she says he needs it. It's been a month and yesterday was the straw that broke the camel's back. Kid came in crying as usual. I tried my usual redirection, which didn't work. Mom was giving me a look of, "See what you did?" Then she had the nerve to say to him, "I know you need your tablet, we've talked about this before, Miss Lucy is strict." That pissed me off. I ended up telling her to take him home right then and there. She was shocked and tried to stammer. He was my first kid of the day, so there was no scene. I just handed back his backpack, said he was no longer a student of mine, and began to pack his extra clothes and the sippy cup he kept. Mom was in tears as she left. My husband thinks she was right. I'm too strict and should have broken policy instead of causing drama. There was no medical need for the tablet. It was all just that he wanted it. I'm not making a waiver for electronics. That won't stop other issues with the tablets, such as jealousy and drama, so my "don't make me the bad guy" rule has been misunderstood, partly as I worded it poorly. I don't expect blind obedience. No one has to agree with my rules. They can challenge them, to me. But to their kid, I'd rather them explain everyone has different rules and that while they're with me, things will be different. I do the same with parents who have different rules than mine. I never say they're wrong or strict. I say that we have different rules at school and to listen to mom and dad. This is also a policy for pacifiers, bottles, and potty training. I'll approach any of these milestones when you ask, but you have to be working on it at home too. The kid won't progress if they only go pee on the potty at home. And the child was not autistic or non-verbal. If he was, an exception would be made. I returned her money for the last few days of January and texted an apology for terminating without notice, and said I hope she was able to find care. She said she left him at her mom's. She also asked if there was any way I'd reconsider, and I said no. We had a long phone call and no minds were changed, but it was the ending we should have had. My husband, 35 years old, does not have a car. He sold his old one to help pay for his brother's wedding. I did not agree on this, but he had this car before we got together, so it's a shared property. Besides that, I have my own car, so that did not affect me till my husband started complaining about having to commute to work and hangout places. He tried to get me to let him drive my car several times, but I stood firm and put a boundary, making him understand that my car will never be driven by him. One of the reasons why is because of how bad his driving is. His brother lives out of town. My husband asked if he could drive my car to the wedding, but I refused, but not because I'm not invited. Another story for another day, because like I said, my car is off limits. He threw a fit, calling me unreasonable to let him take public transportation because he can barely stand it for 10 minutes, let alone hours. I said it wasn't my problem, which irritated him but made him stop arguing about it. The day that he was supposed to travel out of town, I woke at 10 a.m. and couldn't find my car key. I went outside and couldn't find my car either. I was beyond pissed. I called him and like I expected, he took it and was on his way to the other town. I lost it and told him I gave him no permission to take it for a whole 5 days and said that if he won't turn around with it and come home, then I'd call the cops and report it missing. His response was, "You wouldn't dare do it 'cause you know what would happen." I hung up on him, then immediately called the police and told them about my situation. I did not tell them my husband took it because they'd think it's a family dispute and decide to not get involved. I just reported it missing. 2 hours later, I got a call from my husband saying he was back in town and was being held at our local police station. I went to the station and talked to the cops. My husband made a scene there, swearing over and over that I gave him permission to take it, and said I was acting out of jealousy and spite because he was going to attend a wedding that I was not invited to. I took my car and went home, but he had to stay a little longer. He came home in the evening and went on a rage fit about how I created an awful situation and almost caused him to miss his brother's wedding. He called me vindictive, bitter, and a lunatic to call the police on him and try to accuse him of stealing my car. He had to leave the same day to be able to be there with his family and decided to extend his stay, and he still hasn't gotten back yet. Right now his mom and brother are blasting me for what happened and calling me spiteful. My husband Derek and I have been married for 3 years, together for 7 total. Several years ago, about 6 now, I guess, I worked closely with a male coworker, Paul, that Derek was never fond of. Paul and I never had an inappropriate relationship. Derek's jealousy wasn't completely out of nowhere. I get why he felt that way. Those couple years were a perfect storm of relationship stress. I was working long hours. We were living apart after trying and failing to move in together. Our relationship was still fairly new. And then you add in a handsome coworker I had to spend long hours with and saw more than my boyfriend at the time. Paul was the source of several fights. Again, we never did anything that wasn't completely kosher. Eventually I told Derek he needed to trust me and get over it, or we were going to have to break up. He said he would stop worrying, and for the most part things were good. When Paul transferred out of state a few months later, things were really good. There were no worries at all, and our relationship has been amazingly strong ever since. This last weekend, my husband went out with a couple friends to some bars and a football game. When he came home, he was pretty wasted. We talked for a bit, and he mentioned how a friend of his had told him that he broke up with his girlfriend because she cheated on him. I commented on how that was a bummer and good for him for finding out before they got too serious. Derek, however, had a different take on it. He said it was a shame because they had seemed like a good couple, and if they really loved each other his friend could move past the cheating. Just like he had with me. At first I thought my husband was admitting to cheating on me, and asked him what he meant. He told me he always knew that Paul and I had slept together at least once all those years ago. But he knew I was the one for him and forgave me. I told Derek that I had never so much as even hugged Paul, except maybe at his going away party, let alone slept with him. Derek sort of just patted me on the arm, said of course, and passed out. The next morning I asked him about the conversation and he said it was okay, he had forgiven me, it wasn't even an issue. I again stressed that I had never cheated on him with anybody and I needed him to believe me. He sort of did the same, of course you didn't, babe wink thing again, and went to work. Every time I've tried to talk to him since, he won't hear me out. I'm this close to losing it with him. I need him to know that I never cheated, and I'm hurt that he thinks I would do something like that. What do I do? Do I just let him have this since it's not really hurting anything, or what? I don't want my own husband to think so little of me that he thinks I would cheat. That's not who I am. My 7-year-old daughter's doing virtual school in our living room recently. I heard her teacher address a girl named Kelly a few times, which stuck out to me because my daughter's class is only about 15 kids and I know them all by this point in the year. A couple times more and I realized she was calling my daughter Kelly. My daughter's name is Keely, pronounced Keely. So after school was over I asked her if that had been happening all year in this teacher's class, and she said it had, and it really annoyed her. I asked her why she hadn't corrected the teacher if it annoyed her so much, and she said she had repeatedly at the beginning of the year, but the teacher kept calling her Kelly, so eventually she gave up on reminding her. I sent the teacher a quick email explaining the misunderstanding but got no response. This teacher teaches a special subject, think music, gym, art, or language, not just one grade level. So my daughter will be in her classes for the next several years, so we couldn't just wait it out. And how moments like these are handled now will set the stage for how my kid deals with similar situations on her own in the working world. I encouraged my daughter to come to class early or stay later again, thinking maybe she hadn't heard or understood her last time. So a quiet one-on-one would be better. She got to the class early and she told her very politely that her name was Keely like really, instead of Kelly like jelly. And that people often get it confused, so she just wanted to clarify. So class starts and sure enough she gets called Kelly again almost immediately. So there's only so much self-advocation a 7-year-old can be expected to do. I just walked over and said, "Hi, this is Keely's dad. Her's name not Kelly. It's Keely." A few hours later I had an email in my inbox inviting my wife and I to a parent-teacher conference with the vice principal. The long and short of the meeting ended up being the school feels that while the teacher probably should have learned her name, that the real problem is she feels I challenged her authority by correcting her in class and that the names were similar enough for it to not have warranted such drastic action. That surprised me. I couldn't believe a meeting was necessary, let alone that it cast blame on us. I can't tell if I'm being that annoying, my kid matters most parent that my grandmother the schoolteacher always complained about, or if the teacher should just learn her damn name, because that's a basic part of her job.